Hey nerds, we are going to do a review and breakdown of The Penguin episode 6, starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I am Colin. This is now the 6th episode of this series, and it premiered tonight on Max and HBO. The title of this episode is called The Gold Summit. It is written by Nick Towne and directed by Kevin Bray. And the spoiler-free log line of this episode is Oz seeks to expand his reach in the city as Victor crosses paths with a former adversary. So my spoiler-free thoughts is that it's a solid episode, doesn't reach the heights of last week's episode, but it's still up there in terms of writing and character development, as well as tackling issues of mental health, class divides, and a villain's journey. Very dark and grim actually throughout this episode in one area of town, in contrast with the light and cheery part of another. But it goes to show you that in Gotham, everything's corrupt. It doesn't matter if you're in the light or in the dark. It pretty much is the same thing. So it was very good for the writers to really point that out to the audience. There were also some tender moments between Oz and his mother, Sophia and Sal, as well as Oz and Vic, plus the moment in which Sophia and Julian, where it gets very rough between the two. You also have to admire in this episode and also in the series overall, Oz's resilience and never say die attitude. He just keeps on coming no matter what happens to him, no matter what their circumstances, no matter what adversities gets placed in him, whatever problems he has, he does figure it out and he just keeps working at it. And you have to admire that. In terms of rating, I would say that this is a 9 out of 10, which is going to be a movie marathon. I think that it is definitely not as strong as the last episode where there were a lot of shocking deaths. But if you like character development and the social dynamic of a corrupt city between rich and poor, then I think that you would probably give this a 10 if you just focus on that aspect of the storytelling. What brings it down is that it's a foreboding type of thing going on. Death is marching at the door. So those are my spoiler-free thoughts. If you like what I have to say about this episode and about The Penguin as well, please like, share, and subscribe for more. We really appreciate your support as we grow as a channel, and definitely check out all of our other reviews and content on our channel. So without further ado, spoilers ahead. From the last episode, we saw that Vic and Oz has found an underground layer where they could distribute and hide the drugs, and it will be a place where nobody will know what's going on with their drug shipping business. And we see that Vic has really grown into himself a lot more. He's carrying a gun. He is making drops everywhere. So he's doing well for himself, and he's driving back to the underground layer to speak with Oz about the progress that's been going on in the streets. He also noticed that there was one of Sophia or Sal's goons is going after him, but later on you'll find out that Sophia's goon was not able to track him to where he was. So Vic was also very good at trying to get away from things at this point in time. We see how big the operation has become because when we left off in the previous episode, there were only 2 mushroom plants available. And at the end of episode 5, we found out that they were going to use this underground layer as their base of operations. They're taking in a lot of money. They've taken a lot of hired men. And also there's a lot of distributing that's going on, and people are getting money into pockets. So Oz is very grateful for that aspect of it and taking care of his people. It's still a very shoestring operation because they can't get power into Ground Point, and that's also going to be a plot point that you'll see later on in this episode. You also get to see how sophisticated it has become, where it's almost like a factory producing bliss for all points in Gotham, and using the underground tunnels of this abandoned trolley system to move their product from one place to another. So it makes it very easy for him to do that. So again, it speaks to what I said in the spoiler-free part, where Oz is very resilient and Oz is very quick on his feet as well into thinking about these types of things so that he's able to maximize whatever disability he might have or perceive to have. So he's becoming much more powerful in the criminal underground. And then we get to see how Sophia has been reacting to all the things that's been happening to her, to have some relationship with Julian Rush. It's been alluded to a lot in previous episodes, and it seems that Sophia has been acting on it, and there was a lot of bondage and role-playing that was involved, I am sure. They didn't really get to see a lot of it. There was some slight nudity. It was definitely very interesting to see that there was a lot of needs between the two individuals that has had tension over the last few episodes. We also get to see here that Sal is in the kitchen trying to be much more family man about the situation and revealing to Sophia that this was an old family recipe. And this is basically what gangsters have said, that they're breaking bread and that they're trying to bury the hatchet in a lot of things, and they have a common enemy involved. And so they're trying to get to know each other, but at the same time, they know that this is almost like a marriage of convenience because they have a common enemy right now in Oz. Then we get to see that Oz is really not living the high life as Sophia and Sal may have presumed. You can see that Oz is really struggling to even try to get electricity and heat into the apartment building that Vic has found for them hiding out. And this is really a struggle for Oz because his mom is facing the effects of dementia, and he was also explaining later on how doctors with their fancy degrees can't even figure out what's happening to his mother. He has a lot of resentment toward the ruling class, and you get to see that throughout this episode as well, and that he portrays himself as much more of a working man and a down on the dumps individual who's trying to rise up against corruption of the ruling class and the bourgeoisie. Whether or not this type of criminal populism is going to work for the other criminals that are in town and also the people that he takes care of with the drugs through money, we don't really know yet. But at the same time, he has the charisma and he has the power and the muscle to enact upon those type of populistic overtones. But at the same time, he is still very compassionate towards his mother, and we'll get to see that later on in this episode as well. We see here that Vic has had a problem with one of his adversaries, and it's said in the spoiler-free log line that his adversary Squid, which we saw in the previous episode, is trying to get into this criminal enterprise, and Vic is very hesitant to try to bring him in because of the fact that he wasn't really treating him very well back in the day anyway, and he's presuming that Squid might take advantage of him, and he alluded to that as well when he said that he didn't want to steal those rims, but he was forced to by Squid at the time. So Vic is conflicted, and he did try to address to Oz as to what am I going to do with this situation, but Vic took upon himself to, we'll see later on what will happen to Squid, but this was the first interaction between Squid and Vic. We then get to see that Sophia and Sal breaks into Oz's house to try to find some clues as to where he is. To no luck, they don't really find out where he is. Sal gets very frustrated, and Sophia gives him a golf club and tells him to practice on a swing, which means to smash everything into place. Sal is very upset because he has lost so much. He has lost his wife and also his son to Oz, and Oz basically has nothing. He doesn't have any family, even though his mother is still alive. They don't know that. Sophia is much more of a level-headed individual, and you can see here that she's sifting through his bedroom to find clues, and then she finds out that there's this pair of underwear from a woman that was in Oz's house, and she finds out that woman was Eve. And the audience knows from previous episodes the relationship between Eve and Oz being transactional. We get to see a very touching scene between Oz's mom and Oz. Oz's mom was in the bathtub in a mode of dementia, doesn't know where she's at, and Oz had to take her out of the bathtub soaking wet and cold. And then there was a very touching moment where his mother was saying, maybe you should just let me go when the time is right, because I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to be like a vegetable for the rest of my life. I want to have at least some of my dignity. And Oz, really heartbroken at this point because he's lost so many members of his family, and he also mentioned that he didn't want to be like his father. And Oz basically promises her that he will pull the plug on her if the disease is gaining a foothold on her mental health. Power's not back on at Crown Point. At first, he doesn't know what to do, but we find the other part of Gotham, which is living high on the hog, as he had put it. He confronts one of the councilmen, and he puts a plier to the middle of his nose and basically pinches him and threatens him to say that he better turn the power back on or bad things are going to happen to him. Now, the councilman was trying to hold his ground, basically saying that he owed Carmine and not him, but Oz is the new boss in town. You get to see, this is basically what happens in politics, where push come to shove, things are going to work. Things are going to happen. It's a very chilling indictment because that is how it works in real life, where you can't threaten people, of course. I'm not saying that people should do that, but at the same time, things will get moving when things are desperate, when things are disastrous, when things are not looking very good politically for any elected official. We then here get to see that Vic is consoled by Oz, and the reason why Vic does need consoling is because he killed the squid, and it was his first dive into this journey of murder, stealing, and crime, and Vic is shaken. And Oz basically said, it'll get better soon. And this reminds me a lot of Training Day, the movie where Hoyt the detective is being corrupted by Alonzo Harris, portrayed by Denzel Washington. He just sees a lot of these corrupt, bad things that are happening around him. He gets sucked into it, and then he becomes a part of it. Unlike that movie where Hoyt does not want to be a part of that type of enterprise, Vic is still struggling to figure out where is his part in it. But I think that the lure of money and his status is corrupting him, and because Oz is such a charismatic character, and also Oz spared his life, he feels as though he owes him in that way. We then get to see near the end that Oz brings together all the different gangs, and at first the gang leaders were hesitant and were saying, what the heck are you doing? Is this a joke? By giving them beers? And this is where Oz launches into his populist message about the haves and have-nots. And it's pretty interesting that you can see the wheels were turning throughout his speech on the different gang leaders that were there. Of course, the triads were a lot more skeptical because the triads have a lot to lose, and also they have a deal with Sophia already. And also they have international distribution, which Oz really craves. But at the same time, they are still hesitant because they've seen him firsthand. Now, even the Irish gang, the Sullivans, wanted to be with Oz, even though some of their henchmen were hanged upside down by Sophia and Sal's men. So it's very interesting that they were able to fall in line, but the triads were not. So we'll see whether or not the triads are fully in. And finally, because of what Oz did to the councilman, was able to turn the power back on. And like I said, things happen when push comes to shove. Oz's mother and Vic were very happy to find out that the power is back on, and they were dancing to a song while the camera then rolls to the point where Sophia's in the same room. And we don't know what Sophia's going to do in the next episode, and when Vic and Oz's mom will see her, what will happen. We find out that Eve was the one that sold them out because Eve was trying to protect her interests, but also her girls as well. So that is the part of the transactional dynamic that Eve and Oz were in, and Eve figured out that she needed to save herself, and that's why she gave up Oz's mom and Vic. So again, we don't know what's going to happen because it was left where Sophia was right there in the house but not acting just yet. that was the end of that episode. It'll be very interesting to see in the next episode, what is she going to do? Because you thought that Sophia was going to kill Eve, but Eve didn't die. And basically Eve thought that she was going to die as well, but she didn't die. So we'll see what happened with Oz's mom and with Vic. So those are my thoughts regarding The Penguin episode 6. We want to hear what you have to say about this episode. Please comment down below, like, share, subscribe for more content like this, and we will see you in the next video. All right, take care, everybody.
Oh,